In the professional world, there's a concept called separation of duties. It's the bedrock of any functioning organization. The idea that the person who spreads the money should never be the one who approves the bill, and the person who handles the cash should never be the one who balances the books. It's like a vault that requires two different keys held by two different people. But over the last few weeks, as I've combed through official audit reports from across Washington state, I found a disturbing trend. It seems like our local and regional governments have decided to throw that vault door wide open. From the town of Medellin, where $250,000 vanished, to the King County Regional Homeless Authority, where we're looking at a $44 million cash flow crater. The pattern is identical. One person holds all the keys, no oversight, no verification, no accountability. Today, we aren't just talking about accounting errors, we're talking about the systematic failure to protect your tax dollars. From the outreach shell games funded by the Climate Commitment Act to the millions of missing taxpayer funds in King County, we're going to map out exactly how your money is disappearing, who's holding the keys, and why the systems meant to stop this are failing you.
From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth.
Welcome back to Left Coast News. The deep dive into the vault you didn't know was standing open. Let's get to work. Let's start at the very bottom of the ladder, our local districts. In Medellin, a town of just a few hundred people, a single clerk treasurer managed to misappropriate over $225,000. How? By holding all the keys. They were the ones who ordered the goods, paid the bills, and balanced the books. There was no two-key system. There was no oversight. When you look at the Washington State Auditor's reports, like the $41,000 lost at the William Shore Pool District, it isn't just about bad apples. It's about a design flaw in local government. We are asking small staffs to operate like major corporations without the internal controls required to protect the vault. Now scale that up. Take those same single point of failure vulnerabilities and apply them to state agencies like the Employment Security Department or the Department of Corrections. We're seeing employees banking flex time and exchange time with zero written protocols. In a private company, that would be a fireable offense. In our state government, it's treated as an operational gray area. When politics are vague, accountability becomes impossible. But the real gut punch to the taxpayer is what happens when you combine this lack of oversight with massive billions of dollar initiatives like the Climate Commitment Act. We were told the CCA would be a $20 million investment in health outcomes for our most overburdened communities. Instead, an investigation by the Washington Policy Center found that of 21 projects funded in 2025, 20 of them failed to show any measurable reduction in air pollution. Look at the Urban League of Seattle. They received over $400,000 in taxpayer grants. According to their own budget, 80% went to staff and 20% went to overhead. That's not a climate project. That's a public-funded payroll operation disguised as environmental policy. When you don't require grant recipients to measure actual air quality, you aren't fighting climate change. You're just funding a slush fund for special interests. And then we arrive at the crown jewel of mismanagement, the King County Regional Homeless Authority. If the local pool district was a leak, the KCRHA is a structural collapse. We are talking about a negative cash position that reached nearly $45 million in mid-2025. That forced the agency to borrow money just to keep the lights on, resulting in over $1 million in interest payments alone. That's $1 million of your tax money gone, not to help someone on the street, not to build a unit of housing, but to pay interest on a debt created by simple, preventable administrative incompetence. The forensic audit is clear. $13 million in public funds are essentially lost in a fog of unreconciled receivables. Whether you call it fraud, mismanagement, or a failed experiment, the result is the same. The vault was left wide open, and the money is gone. Across the board, from the small-town clerk in Medellin to the high-level bureaucrats in King County, the narrative is identical. We have traded fiscal responsibility for policy by good intentions. We stopped asking for receipts. We stopped checking the balances, and we stopped holding the keys. But as we dig into these reports, we're seeing the tide turn between the new transparency rules coming from the federal level and the scramble for an inspector general in King County. The pressure is building. The question remains, though, are we actually going to implement the two-key system to protect your money? Or are we just going to keep handing out the keys to anyone who calls themselves a stakeholder? And just when you think the picture couldn't get any bleaker, the financial markets have sent us a message we can no longer ignore. Moody's Ratings, the agency that tells the world whether our state is a good bet or a fiscal risk, has just officially shifted Washington's outlook to negative. Think of this as a formal warning. Moody's isn't saying we're broke yet, but they are telling us our current trajectory is unsustainable. If we keep spending money we haven't earned, and we keep losing millions to reconciled receivables and administrative neglect, our AAA credit rating will be the next thing to vanish. Why does this matter to you? Because the state, like any homeowner, has to borrow money to build bridges, schools, and transit systems. If our credit rating drops, the interest rate we pay on those loans goes up. It's simple, brutal math. Analysts are already warning that a formal downgrade could tack on roughly $250 million in additional borrowing costs over the next 4 years. That is money that isn't going into infrastructure, it isn't going into services, and it isn't going back into your pocket. It is being paid directly to bondholders simply because our state government couldn't manage its own checkbook. When you look at the $34.5 billion Sound Transit shortfall, this becomes a crisis of its own. Sound Transit is already planning to rely on massive multi-decade borrowing. If the state's fiscal instability forces interest rates higher, the cost to service that debt could balloon so far that these projects become essentially unaffordable. We aren't just looking at project delays anymore. We're looking at a scenario where our state's fiscal management acts as a tax on every future project we try to build. This is the transit tax trap. The more we waste, the more we have to borrow. The more we borrow, the higher our interest payments. The higher our interest payments, the less we have for actual results. So we have a choice. We can keep running these agencies like a Wild West experiment, hoping that someone else will pick up the tab, or we can demand the kind of oversight that would make Moody's, and more importantly, the taxpayers, believe that this state is finally ready to balance the books. The vault door is open, the outlook is negative, and the bill is coming due. It's time we stopped asking for more money and start demanding better math. Before we go, I want to give you the tools to be your own watchdog. When you hear your local leaders promise transparency or new initiatives, don't just take their word for it. Pull the books yourself. Here is your taxpayer watchdog checklist to determine if your local district is actually managing your money or just leaving the vault door wide open. Number 1, search for the single point of failure. Go to the Washington State Auditor's Office Report Search Portal, type in your local city, school district, or port. Look specifically for the management letter or accountability audit. If you see a line item regarding segregation of duties, that is code for the vault door is open. Check the negative position. Does your local agency have a history of running negative cash balances? If they are borrowing money to pay for day-to-day operations, they are already on the road to the same crisis we're seeing at the KCRHA. Follow the outreach money. If a grant-funded program claims to be fixing a crisis like pollution or homelessness, search their budget. If the primary expenditure is staff, outreach, or consultants, ask yourself, what is the measurable output? If they cannot point to a change in air quality or measurable reduction in a specific problem, It's not a solution, it's an administrative expense. Demand the 2 key protocol. Ask your local council or board members who initiates our expenditures and who approves them, and who reconciles the bank statement. If the answer to any of those is the same person, you don't have a system, you have a risk. Watch the interest charges. Look at the debt service section of your district's financial reports. If you see recurring interest expense or late fees on standard operating costs, your tax dollars are being burned just to pay for administrative incompetence. These reports aren't just dry documents for accountants. They are the paper trail of your community's future. If you find something, if you see the red flags we've talked about today, send them to us. We're building a map of these vulnerabilities across the state, and we're going to keep holding the line until the vaults are locked and the books are balanced. We've walked through the reports, we've looked at the numbers, and if you aren't angry, you haven't been paying attention. We're talking about your money, the money you earn while you're out there working full time, the money you pay into a system you were told would fix our roads, clean our air, and tackle our crises. And what do we get in return? We get a clerk in a small town treated like a piggy bank. We get state agencies that don't even have the dignity to write down a policy for how they spend your salary. We get climate programs that are really just payroll scams for special interests, and we get a regional homelessness authority that manages to lose $13 million in a fog while burning $1 million more just in interest payments because they couldn't balance their own checkbook. And now the rating agencies are telling us that the state's fiscal house is so shaky, it's going to cost us $250 million just to borrow the money we need to fix the messes they made. They are passing the bill for their incompetence directly to you. This isn't startup trouble. This isn't growing pains. This is the slow motion looting of the Pacific Northwest by a government that has completely abandoned its duty to protect the taxpayer. They don't respect your money because they don't have to. They know you're busy. They know you're tired. And they're banking on you just looking the other way. Well, the vault door is open, the cupboard is bare, and the tab is hitting your kitchen table. If this doesn't make you sick, if this doesn't make you demand heads roll, then they've already won. But on this show, we don't look away. We are going to keep digging, and we are going to keep shining a light on these lost millions, and we are going to make sure that the people responsible for this financial bonfire can't hide behind the word reconciliation anymore. Enough is enough. Lock the vault, balance the books, or get out of the way. If you're as tired of the status quo as I am, don't just listen, take action. These stories aren't going to fix themselves, and the mainstream outlets certainly won't cover them with the detail they deserve. If you want the truth behind the numbers, you need to be part of this community. Like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Brighteon, BitChute, Patreon, Substack, Facebook, X, True Social, TikTok, or wherever you get your content. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next deep dive. If you want to see the audit reports, the spreadsheets, and the documentation we've talked about today, visit our homepage at leftcoastnews.net or behindthelinepodcast.com. We're growing this network specifically to bypass the gatekeepers and get the facts directly to you, but we need your eyes and your ears on the ground. Spread the word, share the links, and let's make sure every taxpayer knows exactly where their money is going. Subscribe, support the work, and stay tuned. We have a lot more digging to do. This is Left Coast News. We'll see you next time.